Hello, everybody. Hi, my name's Liz Genever. Welcome to the Feed the Good Wolf session. Obviously, we have to wear the masks for some of it, but not all of it. You can tell we had a lot of budget on that element of the talk, so thanks to Nick for sourcing them. So Nick and I are co-founders of Calling. So we are a community interest company that was founded officially in September of last year, but we've been running conferences for the last few years, and we're really interested in getting amongst farmers, mainly conventional farmers who are just starting to think about system changes, so sort of helping them and supporting them through some of that. So we're particularly interested in regenerative approaches, and then transpires that when we started talking about that, we realised actually the mindset piece was huge. So actually, how can we get people ready to be ready for change, if that made sense? So that's when we started to think about things like this. But I'm just going to hand you over to Nick for a bit more.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming all this way to the very end of the fields at the last session of the day. I'm Nick Renison and I farm in Cumbria with Reno over there, the flocking awesome t-shirt on. And we moved to our farm in 2012, and for the last 12, 13 years we've kind of completely changed how we farm and but mainly how we think. And that was kind of the building blocks for me of where Calling come from. So I hope you enjoy the session. Liz and I don't take ourselves very seriously, and the key to our work is to be very relaxed. And also we have this element of cringe, which we really don't mind putting ourselves through. So just watch out.
Do you want to talk about the winter meetings or the podcast?
So we came here to Groundswell in 2018, and we realised it was very far away from Cumbria, and it didn't have a huge amount then of kind of pasture-based stuff. So that's where Calling came out from. So imagine 3 years ago we had 3 years ago we had a group of farmers in a shed in Cumbria, and there was a real kind of a positive vibe there, and we had some great speakers. But after last year, we realised that we were talking possibly to an echo chamber of farmers that were already converted. So we realised this year we needed to go out and seek other farmers who were on the cusp of wanting to change. So we've done a series of, we call them Farming Forward, a series of winter meetings where we find a selection of really good, cool farmers who've done some different things, and we invite farmers to a meeting in the evening at night, and we feed them, and they don't have to pay for it, and they get to listen to really good farmers. So we've done a series of those meetings. We're hoping to roll those out more again this time, and it's just creating a safe place where farmers can kind of think, I want to change, but I don't quite know how to do it, and it's that conversation. Calling also does, we have a podcast, which is again very relaxed, where we have a chat with farmers. The conference this year is in Tim's shed up in Cumbria on August the 3rd is our main conference day. We've got also an event on the Sunday and a day for industry on the Friday. So look at our website, look at our Instagram, and our main speaker is Alan Williams from Understanding Ag, who Stuart I hope will give a plug to.
So thank you. Yes, so carboncalling.farm is the website, and Instagram is carboncalling24. Yeah. So the linking back to the wolves and why we've got wolves in the title. So when we were starting to talk about the mindset shift, I spoke to someone called Holly Beckett, who ran an organisation called Focused Farmers. And she said one of the sort of ideas that always stuck with farmers was about a proverb about having two wolves inside us all. So I just need to look at my notes. So the first one is the bad one. So it's full of anger, envy, sorrow, regret, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority. And we also have a good one, which is joy, peace, love, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth. And the idea that which wolf wins. So we have this fight in all of us in terms of this bad wolf and the good wolf. You can decide between me and Nick which one's which. But the one that wins is the one that we feed. So we have ultimate control about, it's just a small hurricane. We have ultimate control about how we wish to feel because we can feed the good wolf inside us. So part of the winter meetings we did and today is actually hearing from farmers who have made a concerted effort to feed the good wolf rather than being in this sort of negativity cycle that you might encounter with farming communities. So in terms of the farmers we've got in front of you, we're going to hear from them in order. So Stuart's going to go first. So Stuart is a mixed farmer from Northumberland. We've then got Harry Hodgson, who is mainly livestock farmer from County Durham. And then we've got Tom, who is mixed plus farm shop. Sorry, Harry also has a farm shop in Buckinghamshire, Northamptonshire border. So we're going to do them in order. They're going to do sort of 5-8 minutes introduction. We'll have some time for questions. Nick and I will ask them some things. If anybody's got a burning question, we can go through it. So that's the plan. So I'm going to hand you over to Stuart.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for coming to the final graveyard shift of the day. Yeah, my name is Stuart Johnson. I'm a farmer from Northumberland, a livestock farmer, mainly beef and sheep, do a bit of arable as well, mainly for home use. I'll tell you where we were. We were good production farmers, maybe 10 years ago. 12 years ago, we were all about the sort of inputs, putting a lot on, driving to maximise yield, thinking we were maximising profit a lot of the time, but probably weren't. And we were readily using fertilizers and all the inputs and all that sort of stuff to get to where we were. We've changed the system quite dramatically over the last 12 years. My reasoning behind that was because I wanted to make more money, so I was just basically went down this little rabbit's warren for profits was my main driving goal. Everyone has their own different motivation. Mine was profits. Some people might have water. Some people might want to store carbon. Whatever your reason is behind it. The sort of beauty of this thing is that everything else is coming with you, whether you wanted to or not, which I like. So I wanted more money, so I went down this rabbit's warren of trying to figure out how I could cut input costs. We started that with the arable side of things. Basically started trying to use strip tillage rather than ploughing in combination and all that sort of stuff. Very quickly realized it worked sometimes and sometimes it didn't. Could lower the inputs where the soil was healthy, and we could get away with that. So that sort of opened up this whole thing of how important the soil was, something I had not considered at all until that sort of point. So I would say that was about 2017, and then from that point onwards, we've kind of moved into this low input, direct drilling for the arable. The livestock side of things was when we really started seeing some improvements, when I realized you could do different ways of managing livestock, which is our mob grazing round super high density if we can, moving every day, and then trying to make sure that we don't come back big long recovery period and then an enormous rest period after that. So sometimes we might graze a cell on a bit of land. It might see animals twice a year maybe. Sometimes it might just see it once. Sometimes we'll rest it for the whole year depending on what we think that field needs. It's we use AMP grazing, which is adaptive multi-paddock grazing. We are trying to make sure that what we do is not rigid or set. Everything we do is really fluid and we change it around all the time. So when we started down this path, we realized that the livestock that we'd been imposing on the land did not suit this system. So we've now had to change a lot of the livestock breeds to something that fits the system slightly better. And we've had to adapt that with the sheep and the cattle. So we got rid of all of our sheep and cattle that we had, the breeds, and we've moved into the things slightly more than that now. So we use see you, everyone. That's fine. It evened up. Don't worry. So we use a 5 and 2 rotation with the arable land now. So we used to go about 200 acres of arable, but it's we don't use as much arable anymore because the cattle are outside longer. We're not feeding very much anymore. So we now moved to about 75 acres of arable, and it's done on a 5-2 rotation. 5 years of legume and herb-rich sward, and we sort of build up that fertility bank account, and then 2 years of arable where we cash out a little bit just to get that super low input arable crops. Just for sort of to sort of put that into figures maybe a little bit, we have like a break-even point of about 1.1 tons an acre on the barley now. So the idea being that we don't need to punt for that 3-4 tons an acre. We're still making a good profit at 2.5-3 tons an acre, and we're leaving plenty left in the soil on the table for next year. So that's our sort of philosophy now, is we're not trying to take everything all the time. We're not trying to extract. We're not necessarily trying to impose our will on the land. So we've had if we want to refer maybe to the wolf a little bit, we've had a lot of successes, but an awful lot more failures over the years. And I guess the whole idea of trying to stay positive is very much a mindset change. Something that you kind of have to get used to is that we're going to fail a lot. And I used to beat myself up about failing a lot because I always like to think that I was winning at everything. And I think the idea that we can use those failures as learning lessons is quite good. So as a business, we've probably had to reassess what we thought was positive and negative completely. We always like to say, I do a bit of work with Understanding Ag, which is Gabe Brown and Alan Williams. And we always say that what we're telling people to do is really, really, it's easy, it's simple to do, it's just not easy to change. And that most of that is focused on the mindset side of it. Is it's really hard to get your head around something that is vastly different from what we've done. So we have a lot of disputes at home about how we're doing stuff and how it's working and how it's not. But a lot of the time, it's sort of works itself out nicely in the end anyway. So I always say now that we're all singing on the same hymn sheet. We're not often singing the same notes a lot of the time, but we're definitely on the same hymn sheet now. So do you want to know any more about me, or would you like me to stop talking?
And just, you mentioned it was about the more money bit, but
Yeah.
what's the deeper bit of that? So was it that you're rented land, or you wanted to buy more land, or there was a debt pressure? So what was that profitability piece about?
I'm just a tight farmer, Liz, so I just wanted to try and make as much money as possible. We're tenant farmers, so we obviously have to pay the rent. So I'm a bit of a nerd with the numbers, so I'm always crunching numbers, assessing the enterprises to see which ones are and which ones aren't paying the way. So when I first came out to the farm, we used to do an awful lot of enterprises within enterprises. So we did the sheep, but we were doing breeding sheep, breeding fat tups, breeding lambs, fat lambs, store lambs, the whole lot. And realistically, that's all based on the price of sheep. So if the sheep price is good, they're all winning. And if they're not, it's not. So we've kind of simplified it. We've kept sheep in the operation, but we've simplified it right down to sort of just finishing and breeding a few tubs. So I went through and assessed all them, took out all the ones that weren't paying, and then I was trying to make sure that we could be more resilient to what was going to happen, especially when the BPS sort of thing came along, that we were going to be slashing BPS. I thought that we needed to try and make a business that would work without BPS. So for me, the profitability and resilience was what drove the whole thing. But like I say, it can be anything, because everything's coming with you anyway when you do that. I have got a massive amount of interest in the biodiversity side of things a bit more now, which I did not think I'd ever have. So I'd spend a bit of time digging out dung beetles and looking at all that sort of stuff, because to me it's an indicator species that's showing me I've got a functioning ecosystem. And if I've got a functioning ecosystem, it means that I'm going to get free stuff basically. So I'm going to save money in my back pocket. So I appreciate what they're doing for me, because it means I'm hopefully going to have a more resilient business and a more profitable business with them being there. So
thank you, Stuart. So we're moving over to Harry.
Hello, I'm Harry Hodgson, a tenant farmer as well from up in County Durham, North Yorkshire border. We run a fairly diverse enterprise. It's a family business. As myself, my wife, I have two children, 6 and 8, and then my parents, who I sort of succeeded from within sort of the last sort of 15 years from when I came back home. I'm extremely fortunate that we had my parents are extremely open, and we had a very sort of fluid succession plan, and that went very easily. So I appreciate that I'm very fortunate in that, because that's not always the case for everybody. We also are very lucky in the fact that we have actually tremendous landlords, being entirely tenanted. My hands are like all my eggs are in their basket, as it were. We have a multitude of landlords from sort of 10 acres up to sort of just lastly we're farming partnership with another landlord of just over 1,000 acres. When I first came home, we have an AHA tenancy off Raby Estate. That's 300 acres, and that we converted to organic in 1999 when my dad did. And from that base, we basically, we moved. My grandfather moved there in '64, and it was previously a sand and gravel quarry. So a lot of what we've done over those years, and more latterly, as we tried to increase stock numbers, has been regenerative without necessarily realising it, because we've had to put fences in, put hedges in, and actually create some soil and find some way of holding some moisture so that we could grow grass during the summer. The farm at home, we have I'd say small farm shop. It's what I would class the traditional farm shop. It's not a mega store like most farm shops are now. It just started in the backyard, in the porch, and we've just grown it little bit by little bit, and that's probably the philosophy we've had with a lot of things we've done. It's just set off and just keep going, and we're not, with being tenants, we haven't got huge capital reserves, so we have to just do things in stages. Where we're at now is we have a really strong farm shop business with an on-site butchery. I employ a butcher and a half, and they butcher all our own meat. Well, caveat that we were doing pigs, but I get pigs off a friend now instead. And that's producing all our own beef, lamb, and chicken goes through that shop. The beef enterprise across, well, we've sort of grown bit by bit. So I say we started off with a core of 300 acres on tenancy, and now we're farming in excess of 1,000 acres across a couple of different agreements, whether it's FBTs, grazing licenses, or and more recently a share farming agreement. Across the whole of it, we run about 150 head of cattle, and we take pedigree Aberdeen Angus cows, and we take all those through to either selling for breeding or to finish. So there's a lot of followers to go with those as well. We run 1,000 ewes. At one stage, we were running up to about 1,600 ewes, but someone said to me quite aptly, I think a sheep's worst enemy is another sheep. And actually, by reducing the sheep numbers back a bit, it's quite easy to model out the figures and realize that actually having a few less sheep and getting a higher price for a stronger, bigger lamb, it pays sometimes to be less is often more. So I'm rattling through it a bit because we do quite a lot of different things. We also, with the sheep, we run New Zealand Tefroms. They're a really, for us, a fantastic low input sheep, but still maintaining a high output. With having to pay a lot of rent across the board, it's all well and good cutting costs, but we have to maintain a high level of output. So everything that we do has to be as much environmentally driven, but also profit driven, because I have a lot of rent to pay. I don't get any SFIs other than on at home, but obviously that goes straight away on rent. So across the board, we are sort of cash negative before we start farming, whereas a lot of people are cash positive before they actually start farming from a production point of view. We also have 3,500 egg layers, which is organic egg layers, and we do those in house as well. So we're not tied up with a packing station. We sell all those to our own customers, whether local dairies. Riverford's a big customer of ours, and that's just another good income stream, and also provides as high level of manure for growing our winter crops. We produce between 1680 fat chickens a week as well for our butcher's shop. So that's just another sort of a variety of a variation on our income stream, and just sells the message for our shop of producing all our own meat. So you can come to us and get your own beef, lamb, and chicken. As I sort of mentioned, all the land that we've farmed has basically been poor quality land, and all the land that we rented around us is basically what other arable farmers don't want to farm. So it's been always in a variety of poor states. So it's sort of through sort of management and what's lastly become regenerative principles, we've had to work to improve that to enable us to turn a profit from that. In terms of like the genetics of our livestock is the core of our business. Across the whole enterprise, we only have one full-time member of staff on the farm. I'm full-time on the farm, and then I have a guy comes in on a Friday to give me a hand. So, and like some of our parcel land are up to 20, 30 minutes away. So at the moment we're carving 75 head of cattle carved 25 minutes away from home. So the quality of genetics is absolutely paramount. Those cows we just check once a day, and they carve away on their own. We carve Angus heifers down at 2-year-old. And these are all sort of metrics that we have to, we can't choose to do, we have to do to enable us to be profitable, to keep going. Sorry. In terms of sort of what makes us resilient, I think the fact that we have a variety of income streams, so certain things have better years than others. It isn't probably a business model that would suit everybody, having quite so much going on and running in different directions the whole time. But I say we are fortunate. My wife's absolutely brilliant, and she works in the business with me, so she runs the farm shop side of things, and then I focus on the farm. And as I said, my parents are absolutely brilliant. They're sort of semi-retired through various health issues and one thing and another, but actually provide a huge support network of go for this, going for that, which is absolutely essential to sort of keep everything going. It's a genetic thing. I could probably warble on for hours and lose track. But
and you've alluded to it a few times, which is you wouldn't call yourself regenerative.
I suppose you're careful what you say in a
regenerative
heavy
festival.
I didn't say I didn't call myself regenerative. We've been doing a lot of things before it was because it was the right thing to do, not because we were following sort of a new phenomenon. For us, it was necessity is the cure of all. Necessity is the cure of all invention. Sorry, I'm stalling here a little bit. Apologise.
You were going a quote. It was a quote that got you.
Oh,
but
God knows.
So it came out of that you had basically sand and gravel that you needed to improve on, and so it became how you approached it rather than knowing that it wasn't that you've watched a YouTube clip, for example.
No, we needed to increase our livestock output. Well, that was my first. When I first came home, we only had sort of 200 ewes running across the farm, and my dad had sort of focused on the farm shop. So I quickly realised that we need to increase the output of the farm so that the farm could stand on its own as its own business, rather than just a farm shop supporting it, because farm shops might not always be there to support it, or might not always be profitable enough to support it. So all aspects of the business have to stand alone. So the first thing we need to do was to carry more stock, and to carry more stock we needed more grass, and we were organic, so we couldn't put nitrogen on, we couldn't put inputs on. So quite quickly we developed techniques at the time which we're talking sort of 8-10 years ago of rotational grazing and strip grazing, just things we'd seen and picked up from dairy farmers or other industries. I did work on a farm in New Zealand for a little while, so it was just picking up things we'd learned to try and boost output, but doing it without adding in cost.
Perfect, thank you. Any?
Harry, I do wonder when you sleep. But that's not my question. My question is your parents were very forward thinking in terms of succession, and the work we do with Carbon Calling, succession and family politics and dynamics are a major issue. What made them think about offloading to you, or not offloading, but getting you involved in the management so quickly? And also, what advice would you give to people in the audience who are maybe getting close to thinking about succession, and what would you say to them to crack on with it rather than hanging on?
I think for me it was a little bit of a gradual process. It wasn't my initial aim or to come back home. I was initially, after leaving university, I worked for Mitsubishi Cars on their grad scheme because it was a credit crunch and you just had to get a job wherever you could. So I did that for a year and quite quickly realized that sitting in an office was not for me. And having promised them in my interview, it was my lifelong ambition to work for a car company, which they did quote me when I handed in my notice. It wasn't necessarily my plan to come home. I sort of ended up being back at home and doing little bits and bits more. And then my parents my dad, I could say, right, we're getting rid of all the cattle, all the sheep tomorrow, and we're going to ostriches. And my dad would just be like, okay, if you think that's right, we'll do it. So I sort of came back home and I had things I wanted to do. So my dad was like, well, just do it and we'll see how we go. And obviously that then sort of started taking over the core of the original farming business, and it just was a sort of a natural process. But I think also in the succession process, it is two ways, and I think often it's put upon the father that he's not allowing the succession, but often it's upon the son to actually show the initiative.
Or daughter.
Sorry?
Or daughter.
No, but...
Let's be gender appropriate. It could be the daughter.
Sorry, I apologise. That's awful. I have a daughter, she's much more likely to farm than my son, so... on the people involved. But I was talking about my instance. You actually, like, I think the fact that it's upon the offspring to come back and actually show that they're wanting to actually, like, not just expecting to come home and just say, well, you've got this great business, I can see how much money you're potentially making, I want that income now, and you go retire. Is that what actually, I think, whereas for us, I suppose we probably never a huge amount of income to share anyway, it was actually coming in and say, well, like, it was a very natural process that I was actually end up doing all the work, and my dad was then like sort of stepped back and was supporting me. I think it is slightly a two-way thing, rather than it always being upon the father just to hand over to the son that wants to quit his job and come back. So I can understand from, there's always two sides to everything, isn't there?
Thanks, Harry. We are now over to Tom.
I've got some slides because I'm very easily distracted, so I'm trying to keep me on topic a little bit. Interesting to hear what Harry's up to. We're up to lots of the same things, but on a slightly smaller scale. So, and I think Liz has got me in because she likes me to talk about feelings, and I do a bit of that. And apparently Nick wants me to cry,
Sometimes
so I'm going to try not
talking
to.
about feelings.
And I love talking about feelings. Safe space. So I'm Tom Edmondson with my wife Mary, who's sat over there. We are Cranley Barn Farm and Shop. The shop has become a big part of our business, and we're just going to talk about our journey, how we've got into regen ag and how we've got into direct selling, and how that has fed our good wolf, because I didn't realize you were going to ask questions later. So here's where we started. We started in 2012. We were contract fattening pigs for BQP. Oh, I see it here today. And that was the start of our business. We both had day jobs. We got married that year. We built a house. We were quite busy. So we started off doing that. We did that for 10 years. We finished 2 years ago now. And we were given the opportunity to take over the arable as well after a year or two of contract fattening pigs, proving to my father that I am able to do this and I am committed to it, and prove to him, succession conversation, that, you know, we were up and willing and we were committed to the farm. We had to take over the arable in a bit of a hurry because the gentleman that was contract farming it for a few years, my dad's a pig man, not a arable farmer. He came in to combine our wheat and said, I'm finishing the wheat and then that's it, I'm gone. I'm leaving, I'm moving to Scotland. So we had to make a decision in quite a hurry that we were going to become arable farmers as well as both having day jobs and at this point children too. And in our first year, you'll have to excuse the picture of the black grass because it was so bad it broke my camera screen. So I had to put a picture of a tractor on the top of it. But that first year we went into the arable. We thought, right, we're going to go full input. We're going to go full commercial arable, and we're going to make a success with our 200 acres. So we ploughed it all up, and it came up like a hedgehog's back with black grass. It was horrible. It was disgusting. So we left it to the spring, and we had a really wet spring. And then we decided, all right, we'll get out there and we'll get out there nice and early with a Vadistat drill because that's what big commercial farmers do, but we're only 200 acres. So, you know, we had an old drill and the Magnum there, and I got very stuck. And I thought to myself, well, this isn't a lot of fun, is it? But it's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to work in the car industry. I wanted to be a farmer. You sort of roll with the punches to start with, you know, and on we went, and we did a few more years of that, and we sort of moved into slightly different ways of farming, moved into regen ag on the arable. That's another story which I talked about earlier. We won't go into that, but we were doing lots of things that we weren't enjoying doing. We wanted to be farmers. This is what we wanted to do, but we were contract fattening pigs for somebody else. You know, we had these outdoor pigs coming in, contract finishing them in yards, and off they went on a lorry at the end of the time, and if you go into it feeling like it's great, this is exactly what we want to be doing, and then you sort of get into it and you think, well, actually, this isn't a lot of fun. So we started looking at making a few changes, driven by problems with the arable, struggling to get the soil was just completely destroyed. That's what was causing us problems with blackgrass. We didn't like contract fattening for other people and being completely out of control of what was going on our farm and what was going off the farm, and not having any say in how you did that production system. So, we started reading a few things, looking at a few podcasts, coming to things like this and broadening our horizons, and realizing actually there is a completely different world out there of farming, and it doesn't need to be done commercially. You can do things in a different way. And it gave us the fuel to start making those changes. So I went back home to my dad and said, right, Dad, there's this amazing thing. It's called regen farming, or agroecological farming, or whatever, conservation ag, which was what it was sort of coming out of being called at that point. And I've read an amazing book by a chap called Gabe Brown from America. And I was thinking, he's going, what's he talking about? It's not going to translate from America to the UK, This is how we farm, this is how it's always been farmed, and this is what we've learnt, in his farming career since 1965 when he started farming to today. That was how we did it. And then he went away and he thought about it. He does that. Generally, you ask him a question, he says no, and then 2 days later he comes back with a slightly more positive answer, which is always nice. But he went away, and I was thinking, oh God, what's he thinking? And 2 days later he came back with a copy of André Voisson, Grass Productivity, which is sort of if anyone has heard of him, is that he's a lot of the books we're all reading now, their ideas were formed through people like André Voisson. And he went and saw him. He went to see him speak in 1962 in Cheltenham Town Hall and got himself a signed copy. So he'd been sat on this for 60 years, thinking, I'd love to have a go at that, but never doing it because, we were paying rent. We were lucky enough to buy the farm. My dad was lucky enough to buy the farm in the 80s when pigs were extremely good from the landlord we had. So, we're not in a position where we're having to pay rent now. So actually we can afford to do this, but we still need to make money. We still need to be profitable. So, yeah, that's really driven a change in our mindset. And you read all these, you read all the books and you start putting things into practice. And I can't remember, but there's a chart that you go through the sort of initial period of positivity, and then you go into the pit of despair, don't you? And then you come back up again. I can't remember what the chart's called, but I've seen it in a few different people's slides. So we're all guns blazing, going for it, thinking this is going to be amazing. It's the future. And we made a couple of really big mistakes. And then you go, oh no, what a disaster. So go back, that field there with the black grass and the stuck drill, we didn't manage to get an actual crop into it. We put a cover crop into it, which went to flower, went to seed. So, it's gone to seed. There's going to be seeds everywhere. We're going to have, buckwheat and Vasilia growing in our crops forever, which we did for a couple of years. But so we let it go to seed. We rolled it, and then we grazed it. And the soil in 18 months turned from, a block of solid clay with blackgrass growing in it to something that was full of soil life. It was full of worms. It smelt different. And I was still at the beginning of this sort of learning process. So you sort of start educating yourself as to why it's changed, what's different. You find a different set of sort of books and a different few people to study. I started reading Nicole Masters, looking at things like soil food web, which has all been talked about here today. And it was completely new to me and Dad. But so anyway, we're moving on from that, and that crop that we grazed off then regrew again in my spring oats, as you can see in the picture. So that's got Vasilia and buckwheat, and there was a bit of mustard in the middle of it. And I thought, oh, bloody hell, what are the neighbours going to think? I've really messed up now, oh God, we're going to have to go back to full-till agriculture, and I don't want to do that. So we let it grow, and we let it get up to about a foot tall, and the cover crop was growing the same, and then we knocked it back with as we call it, chemically topped it with a sulfonal urea, which isn't ideal, if you're looking at putting in cover crops behind that, because it can lead to residue. But at the time, that's what we did. And this one field, compared to the fields that were next to it, which also had spring oats in them, it out-yielded it. It had less disease pressure. it was heavier. It was a better quality sample when it went to the mill, and the Jordans were really happy with it. And it's like, well, what's driven all of that? And then you start paying attention. You become curious. And you take those things and you are feeding the good wolf, aren't you? Really, and it's changing that mindset from everything's a problem. You feed the bad wolf. You get into this mindset where everything is negative, and then it just causes some of these small differences, small changes, and actually not saying that was crap, let's not do that again. It's saying, right, that didn't work. What can we do to make it better? And what is the opportunity we've got from that? And it still happens today now. But so we've gone through that whole process, and we've got to where we are now today, which is 300 chickens, layers, selling through our small farm shop. We produce longhorn beef, which we mob graze, amp graze, whatever you want to call it. We've got cover crops. We're finding dung beetles. We've stopped using wormers, and the cereals. We're reducing the inputs on the cereals, and we're getting extremely good results from that. So that's how I fed the good wolf from that point of view. And looking forward, going to the future, a lot of this change was driven by the fact you become a parent, your mindset changes, and we've made all these huge changes, and we've brought people onto the farm through having a farm shop, direct marketing everything, and you realise actually people, the customer, they do want this. They really value what the farmer does, and then that fuels that positive mindset even more and makes you want to do more things. But we've got to a point now where we're up to capacity. I obviously need to sleep more than Harry does, because we've got to capacity where we are with our workload now. So I'm focusing on what other things can we bring onto the farm, what other opportunities can we give to other people. So the chap with the veg box there, that's James. We gave him some land. We've done a sort of land sharing arrangement. He was looking for somewhere to grow no-dig vegetables. Fits in with our system. You can sell that through the farm shop. So that's a ready-made market for him. And the more people you get, and we've got also a beekeeper, keeps 12 hives on the farm. We sell that all through the farm shop as well, also the single source from the farm. And you surround yourself with this community, and it's sort of pushing that positivity again. So yeah, that's what we're up to.
Thank you, Tom. So, as you're thinking about your questions for these guys, we'll just ask a couple, and then we'll go to the floor in terms of questions. So, I think throughout each of yours was this sort of how you deal with the risk of being overwhelmed by all the good ideas. So, Stuart, I don't know whether you want to start, because you talked about simplifying your system. You've now got an off-farm job. So do you then need to look at that farm again?
No, we just sort of now we're managing to work the farm. It's more simple, but it's less time. There's less time involved in what we're doing now. So actually, I can afford to go and do things. So actually, at the minute, I'll probably get up early and go and do the cows really early, and then might go away for the day to do something off farm. I'm not necessarily looking to do things off farm. It's more that I was asked to do things off farm, so I took up the opportunity when it was there. So it's in terms of am I looking to do things? Not massively, but we don't need to reassess the farm because we've already simplified things and it's running quite nicely. So,
but that, and I suppose the investment in that has now allowed you to welcome a new opportunity in.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so hypothetically, we could have gone and stacked some enterprises on top of the things we're doing. We could have brought chickens in, we could have brought the sheep in and stuff like that, but obviously you had a different opportunity present itself. So rather than pursue those, I've pursued this one for now, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But we got to a position last year where we actually didn't have enough livestock on the farm to manage the grass that we were growing. So we were saying this year we're going to have to increase the numbers to do that. Now, like you say, we could have increased the numbers by bringing in an extra enterprise on top of that, but in reality probably we'll just increase the cow numbers, because we're still going to be moving the cows around the same, and it's no difference whether there's 100 cows in that mob or 50 cows in that mob. So we've sort of kept the work level the same, but we can increase the numbers off the back of that, and it still affords us the time that we need to do other things. So.
Okay, thank you. Harry, in terms of, been alluded to your sleep patterns, but how do you mean you've got a lot going on? How do you manage your time, I suppose, or how do you and your team's time to make sure everything's done?
I don't feel like I think I do have spare time.
You could just.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you do in your spare time?
I go walking. It's that's one thing we've definitely done. Was sort of a New Year's resolution last year. My wife and we go for a walk. Aim to do it twice a month. It's generally once a month.
Around the cows?
No. Strictly off farm.
Wow.
But we're very lucky. So we've got the Dales, we've got North York Moors, we've got Northumberland coastline, we've got the Lake District. So we get to walk around other people's farms whilst having a half a day away. So that is good. I can't remember what the original question was.
I think you answered that we think you should be overwhelmed, but you don't feel overwhelmed.
No, like I really worked hard on simplicity and efficiency. We have actually removed parts of our business. I used to finish 2,500 pigs outdoors organically as well, which I hated every single second of, and everybody who worked for me hated them as well. So actually, we removed them, and that was nobody liked doing them. I'm not sure they were actually that cash positive, and they destroyed the place. I know people sell the sort of dream of finishing it in pigs outdoors is great for soil. It destroys the soil. In the winter, they just dig holes, and we're a dry area as well. We're very dry, and then in summer you just see your soil blowing away in clouds of dust. So we got rid of the pigs, which I enjoyed. We used to have a cafe, and when that was closed during COVID, we actually realised that created about 95% of our problems. It did all right, but actually closing it made our lives a lot better as well. And then simplified a few other little things like cutting down the sort of the variety of like the sheep numbers and simplifying the cattle system even further. Like the cows are out all year round, so they graze pretty much 365 days. We do bring them in for sort of at calving time, purely because like we're performance recording, and I just wouldn't have the capacity to go catch calves, and like we don't suckle calves, we don't do anything with the cows. So like if you're not there when a cow was calved that day, you have got no chance of catching that calf the following day to weigh it. So we do house them that, but the rest of the time they're out all year round. So it's actually it's pretty simple and not hugely time consuming. It's just the fact that we're spread out a bit makes it time consuming, but I can't change that.
Thanks, Harry. And Tom, you like bringing people onto the farm and different enterprises. Do you think do you have the capacity to bring other people on, or are you and Mary trying to limit you're sort of interested in bringing more community on? Do you think that is possible without overstretching yourself?
I do think it's possible to bring more people on, as long as they are running their enterprises remotely, not remotely, without too much assistance from us other than providing them with space and markets, which is what we're trying to achieve. Obviously, there are times when we do need to help them. If we could find someone to come and produce meat chickens on farm, I think that would be a big, a good addition as well. So, we'd be looking for someone to do that with us. And we've also started working with a chef who's wanting to come on and do supper clubs on site a couple of times a month, producing all the meat from the farm and, the honey and all our produce and other hyper-local produce as well to give a real dining experience for the consumers. We are lucky that we've got Milton Keynes within 20 minutes of our doorstep, so there's 350,000 people within 11 miles of us. So we've got a lot of consumers out there that we can really help to add value to our business, and also, but it means we've got to try and get a couple more enterprises in there to sort of extract some of that money and make the business more profitable.
So can you make a complete meal at the moment? Yes.
We could make a complete meal at the moment, yes.
It's a stupid question.
No milk or cheese yet, though.
Okay. Nick, any questions?
No, but I think it's amazing that you make your own bread on the farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't make bread. No, Mary makes bread.
Mary makes bread.
And there's been lots of conversations about growing different heritage varieties of grain, and we've been talking to people today about different kinds of mills and things like that. So, so we can apparently it'll make you a peasant baker if you grow your own and mill your own and bake your own. So it'd be quite fun to be called a peasant baker. But I don't know if you know.
I can
do that,
imagine
do you,
you
Mary?
dressed in white and dusty being a peasant baker. I was going to say, we're going to go to. I don't know where we are for time.
Yeah, sure. Fine. Any questions? Dave is the mic runner. Walker, sorry.
Hello. The question I want to ask is, when you have a really bad year, you've really tried to go down a venture, and it's like to each of you, this question, for each of your own endeavours, and you've really put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into a new project, and then you have a bit of a poor outcome. How do you cope mentally with working through that and doing the same again but tweak it next year, and not like, I'd be very tempted to just go, right, I'm not doing that again. You know, how do you keep your positivity?
For me, I think it's a lot of the time is if you try something that doesn't work, I like to ask why all the time. Why didn't that work? Because I'm very stubborn, and I want to make it work. So I don't know why it didn't work, and then we want to pick out the good bits from it. So rather than focusing on the bad bits, pick out the bits that we did do well and how that was good for making us to progress it, and what can we try to do to enhance that for the next year, sort of thing. So I try not to dismiss things straight away, but I do just try to and figure it out and really sort of focus on the positive side of it rather than the negative. It's very easy in this sphere to sort of jump into something really, really quickly and hard into it, and then get overwhelmed and burnt out. And I think that it's about doing things sort of slow and steady, and logically, if it works, let's build on what works, and if it doesn't work, let's sort of just steer the ship slightly differently and try and get to where it is working. So it's just trying to focus on the good bits and ignore the bad bits, I think. So as long as the bank balance still lines up and you can pay the bills at the end of the month, that's the key. But
I'm a massive overthinker, so I do and part of that is I always try and think of every scenario that could go wrong. We have been through a lot of those scenarios, but so in that aspect, I find that I try not, so I'm not caught out. That's maybe you're thinking like a negative thought pattern, but I think you need to be prepared for everything that could go wrong. And because we're like quite stretched and there's not a lot of slack in the system, I do always have in the back of my mind, like, if this goes wrong, what's our outcome going to be? Like, if we got all abortion in the sheep, for instance, what would the outcome? What could I do to negate that? And also, like, we haven't got a lot of time to dwell, so I think also like having the kids in the house, like, just sort of negativity is quite infectious. So you sometimes just have to sort of just, like, we're fortunate that we have multiple income streams and we're busy. So if something's gone badly or gone wrong, you just have to put it to one side, have a strategy of whether we can sort it out in the short term or it's a long-term fix, and just then throw all your energy into something else. There's no point throwing good after bad. If it's bad, just draw a line under it and move on. It's often it's quite subjective, and it's a lot easier to say than necessarily it is to do. But
Yeah, mirror what you've both said already. It's you've got to focus on what has worked and go with that. But quite often, initially, I will go and put it to one side and forget about it, because you can't. It's not positive thinking all the time. You've got to. You do have to analyse. What was the negative in that? Is it worth carrying on with? Is this going to enhance our business? Is it going to enhance our life, or is it going to make it difficult? And you have to be realistic about whether something is worth doing or isn't worth doing. Turns out commercial pigs aren't worth doing. But so we part that, but then we take other parts of the business and push it forwards.
outside.
But if and then do more of the things that do give you that sort of positive sort of outcome, positive feeling, that bring benefit to your life and to people around you, and work on that rather than the things that don't work.
And I think there's something interesting about farmers have almost grown up with that constant decision making of something not quite working. So I think it's sometimes a challenge for people who come into farming who haven't necessarily had that experience to realise that not everything is rosy, but there is a development of coping mechanism that sits alongside it. But it's when it just keeps pulling you down, and certainly when you do farmer meetings after the winter we've just had, Do you mean that has made a lot of people struggle a lot more than anything else, just because it's been relentless? And so what can we do about that, which is understand what was in our control, what can we change, what can we adapt our system to, but also not avoiding knee-jerk reactions. So it's a lot of it is through support, discussion groups, conversations to sort of get people through some of that. Sorry, I added that bit in. Nick, anything to add?
Farmers are pretty resilient though, in terms of it's been a shock and lambing, but everyone's going to keep sheep and do it again next year. We're very good at just putting stuff to the side. And
I think there's an optimism hidden somewhere deep
yeah,
that it's got to be
farmers
next
are
year.
inherently optimistic
next year.
about stuff, whether it works or not. We're inherently optimistic and keep trying to do that.
John, sorry.
If farmers weren't really truly optimistic, we wouldn't keep doing what we're doing, would we? We might hide it extremely well, but even the most negative farmer must have that base layer of optimism. Otherwise, you wouldn't plant next year's crops, would you? This time next year, we'll be millionaires.
Indeed, Rodney. John.
The ironies of being British is that we very often find it extremely difficult to accept compliments, especially if we have actually done something well. So, flipping the question on its head, instead of how do you react to bad circumstances, how do you react to success, and how do you keep yourself comfortable?
We'll do in reverse order, so Tom can go first.
I shuffle my feet, look down at them, feel a bit awkward, and say thank you very much, and try and move on with the conversation. There's a very good point. Accepting compliments is a trickier place to be. If someone gives you a negative comment, you can say, well, they're wrong, and I'm right because this, but yeah.
So Harry, how do you deal with positives?
I'll tell you when I work that one out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's quite a difficult question to answer. I just pretend it hasn't happened and keep going. Don't believe them. I don't know. It's not.
So actually, this is a new theme we've got to work on: is to teaching farmers to receive compliments.
I think it's an excellent question.
What are they selling? Probably.
Stuart, you seem comfortable with praise. You've got a certificate.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment here. My wife says I'm terrible for this. Where I don't take any time to enjoy the slight successes that we might have achieved. She says that I just bounce straight off into something else, and that's kind of my thing. Is that in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I'm glad that went well, and I'm glad that happened, but I am jumping on to something else straight away to see what I can do elsewhere as well. So. But I do that with the negatives as well. So I guess that's just my characters. I don't try and dwell on the positives or the negatives too much. I just want to keep moving forward, and that's sort of my way of coping with both sides of it, I guess.
But you're logging that experience, aren't you? It's in your memory bank. So when you experience it again, it will come out again.
My wife's logging it. And
Okay.
She'll remind me about it all the time. She tries to make sure that I do sort of give time for that and stuff. So.
Okay. Thank you. Paddy.
Just to build on the same question, do you actually feel like sometimes you have successes but there's nobody else around to see it or celebrate it with or share it with, and does that make you feel disheartened? Like you get a good crop, you get a good yield, whatever it is. Do you feel isolated? Do you feel like there's not enough recognition?
I think when you move into this type of farming, it's actually quite an isolated way of farming to begin with, because ordinarily you go to the mart and you sit there and you talk about what great prices we've all achieved, how big our crops were and stuff, and when you first go into this you suddenly realize that you've got a lot less in common with people that you used to speak to about stuff like that. So it is quite an isolating thing, and I think 10 or 12 years ago I was probably the only one trying to do it, and it was quite a difficult sort of way to keep motivating yourself, and because I was doing something different, I didn't actually tell anyone I was doing stuff different. I just tried to do it quietly, which was also quite interesting. But I guess now, the more this sort of area is building, it's quite good to sort of, we've got a little network. There's 6 of them sitting there who sort of come down, and that's sort of, it's good that we have now got a little team of people who are doing it, and when you get people who you can relate to and you talk to, and I suppose you try and have those people around him and speak to them a lot more, because the people he used to speak to about the top prices of the mart and stuff isn't really relevant anymore, sadly, to what we're trying to do. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not. But
Anything to add, Harry, Tom?
That is a different kind of success, isn't it? You know, you can't go to the pub and say, I grew 7.8 tons of wheat this year. They're going to be like, wow, yeah, because they're all aiming for 12 and 14 and whatever else, maximum input, all costs. And it's the change in sort of a grower's mindset where you're looking at what's my margin been on that, and you know, at what cost did I grow it, whether it be financial or environmental cost as well, you know. So it's as Stuart says, it's surrounding yourself with people who've got that similar mindset, and you can share that success with those people. And it's just, yeah, you don't move on from the people you used to talk to, but it's just you don't talk to them about particular kinds of things. Well, you do when they ask the questions about it. I've got neighbours now who are starting to look over the fence and ask, you know, what have you done different in that field? Because it is starting to look different, and it is starting to succeed, and they are starting to see that. So the conversation is happening, but it's been an isolated time in between starting and now.
Perfect. One final last question. We'll go at the back with a hat. Sorry, not Phil. You're not wearing a hat.
Yes, I was very interested to listen to your talk, especially because you seem to get some positive benefits from having links to the consumer. And I wondered that you seem to be suggesting that. And I just wonder, could you expand on that if that's the case? And is this a way forward for other farmers to get positive input if that is the case?
So in terms of part of your energy comes from consumers, so do you like that direct supply? Would you encourage others to do it? Harry?
I think with all farming, you have to be in all businesses and industries, you have to be very careful of just looking over the gate and thinking that everything's dead easy and rosy. I think people genuinely think that having a farm shop is just an absolute cash cow and you're going to be rolling in it. It's very difficult, and it's very different to just straight farming. There's so many other factors to contend with. Primarily, you have a lot more staff to deal with, and there's a lot of other bills. Like our electricity bill is just shy of £40,000 a year, and then people think, oh bloody hell, he's selling half a lamb for £150. It's like, well, if the lamb's worth 200 quid at the market, and I'm probably losing money at that. We don't actually sell 150 quid either. It's probably about 85, but it is good, and we do enjoy it. And you always take things for granted, and you always want what you haven't got. Like, I yearn for isolation and just a bit of peace and quiet around the farmyard, whereas everybody else that has that yearns for a bit of interaction with people and somebody to talk to. So it is difficult, and there's sort of pros and cons in everything, but it is a very different industry going into retail than straight agriculture. And if you have no experience of that, it's a much steeper learning curve than it is necessarily farming. Not wanting to put a negative spin on it, but it's not. It's
real. I suppose a realistic point that it's something to be interested in, but needs a lot of research before you go first. Tom,
I'm going to start with if I'm going to be the last one to talk, I'm going to start with the negative of it, which is people want to be in contact with you all the time. They're always emailing and asking, you know, can you deliver, and have you got this? So you never get any peace and quiet, you know, that just want to be left alone on a Sunday afternoon, please, so I can spend it with my family. But the opening the farm shop for our business has been the most positive thing we've done. We are very small scale, you know, we're direct marketing our own livestock, but, you know, it's a cow every 4 to 6 weeks, you know, 6 lambs a month and 6 pigs a month. You know, we're not on a big scale, and it's just being managed by myself and Mary. Well, Mary's managing the shop, I do the running around, but the experiences we have with the customers are extremely positive, because they come down the drive, they see the stock being moved around, they see the different animals in the field next to the shop, and you know, but why are they behind an electric fence? And you have a conversation about mob grazing, and you have a conversation about worms and dung beetles, and the customers we've selected coming down to shop from us, they value that. And it's so nice and fulfilling to be valued as a food producer again, after spending, you know, all these years thinking everyone hates farmers. Well, they don't. they value you, and to be reminded that directly is ever so fulfilling.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So part of this session, and I suppose the wider carbon calling piece, is to try and get very business-focused farmers at scale who are really interested in talking about regenerative approaches, but also with emotion intelligence, so they can talk about other elements of why it's important to them. So again, massive thanks to Tom, Harry and Stuart who are here today. If you're interested in hearing anything else that we do, so yeah, carboncalling.farm, the conference is on the 3rd of August. We've also just got some funding to do some curiosity days in this bit of the world, so they're field days mainly focusing on livestock, but also grassland type systems. So again, more details will be on the website. Thank you for staying. Thank you for coming to the furthest point of the show on the last session. So well done. Round of applause to all of you too. Thank you.